All right, guys, so we're going to dive into our reading of Daniel. We got a nice short one today, Daniel 10. It's the introduction to the big prophecy. The bigger one, it runs for 3, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, three total chapters here. And then tomorrow and Friday, we'll split 11 into two different things because it's a very long chapter. So I'll find a good stopping point for that. But we'll have a... So let's dive in. Daniel 10, chapter verse 1. In the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a word was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belteshazzar, because I can't pronounce that still. And the word was true, and it was a great conflict. And he understood the word, and had understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning for 3 weeks. I ate no delicacies, no meat or wine entered my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all for the full 3 weeks. On the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the great rivers, that is the Tigris, I lifted my eyes and looked, and behold, a man clothed in linen, with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like beryl, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and the sound of his words was like the sound of a multitude. Man, I love it when we talk about angels, because they're not these like pretty floaty little creatures. They're usually pretty intense. Mary falls down in trembling fear. Isaiah, anyone who ever comes across an angel, it's not like this like Hollywood cherubs, like, like the roaring of a multitude. So I guess the way I understand this is like, anyone ever been to like New York City or Center City, Philadelphia? Like in the middle of like just that multitude, right? Just that constant churning of noise. That's what their voice sounded like. It's just this loud thing, or like a multitude bellowing out. And then the imagery is just of glowing, essentially shining and glowing. Everything is glowing and fire. I don't think personally that it's like flickery fire, but I believe it's like that glowing orange of fire, and the burnished bronze that's shining like when light hits it. It's a pretty powerful image, man. And angels don't visit people often, and even in the Old Testament or the New Testament, but when they do, it is a powerful experience. And I think, and we're going to find the same is true for Daniel here. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men who were with me did not see the vision, but a great trembling fell upon them, and they fled and hid themselves. Very much so like Paul on the road to Emmaus, right? He saw the vision, but everyone with him didn't see, but they fled. They were trembling. So I was left alone and saw this great vision, and no strength was left in me. My radiant appearance was fearfully changed, and I retained no strength. Then I heard the sound of his words, and as I heard the sound of his words, I fell on my face in deep sleep with my face to the ground. And behold, a hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. And he said to me, O Daniel, man greatly loved, understand the words that I speak to you, and stand upright, for now I have been sent to you. And when he had spoken this word to me, I stood up trembling. Then he said to me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and humble yourself before your God, your words have been heard, and I have come because of your words. This is a really encouraging passage to me, because it reminds me that if we set our hearts to God, and we set our words to God, we send our prayers to God, that they're being heard. That God is answering them. It may not be in our time, right? Because God stands outside of time, right? In the beginning, time, God created the heavens, space, and the earth, matter. So God created time, space, matter. The three things by which we interact, understand, and exist inside this universe, which means he's therefore outside of that. So God's concept of time is radically different than ours. And for us, especially in modern culture, we want it now. We're the instant gratification culture, especially here in America. We don't understand patience. Most preachers preach for 25 minutes. You go back 150 years ago, you're sitting there for an hour, and praise the Lord, there are still some preachers today that will do that. I love this one guy, Jeff Durbin. He gets me a little riled up, so I can only listen to so much of him. But he will sit there and preach, and his congregation is engaged, and he knows how to keep them engaged. There's something to be said for having perseverance and patience in that regard, and understanding how to wait, how to take your time. He also made, I believe it was Jeff Durbin, made a comment about, today people can't even read a book like Moby Dick. They'll see that, oh, that's too big, too long, don't want to read it. I'll just watch this 15-minute video on YouTube instead. They'll tell me about it. That's good enough. I mean, where have we gotten to? These are things that we need to cultivate, and then we wonder why we have some of the issues we have, right? Oh, I'm not getting it now. Anger, frustration, road rage is all about pride and not getting what we want when we want it. But we need to be patient. We need to fall back on knowing that God is hearing our prayers, and when we set our hearts toward Him, He's going to answer. It's not going to be in our time. Sometimes He'll bless us. I feel like a few of you guys have been here where we've prayed for somebody to be restored to us. Kenny, that one time he went to the hospital, we prayed, literally said amen, and the man walked through the door. Right? So, and I think Mark was here for that, right? And I think Tim, and Bernard, you were here. Yeah, so we have some guys who, we've also had some prayers that take a couple weeks. And then there are prayers that take a lifetime. There are prayers that God doesn't answer in your lifetime. Right? I have to believe that some of the saints during the Reformation that were being martyred prayed that this type of thing wouldn't happen anymore. And in large part in Western civilization it doesn't, but in other parts of the world it still does. Right? For the relief of suffering of their people. And we're seeing that there is relief coming. There's persecution, but there is relief that is being provided. In this country, 100 years ago, most of the country was in grinding poverty. Today, if you make more than $15,000 a year, which is by any means hustling, panhandling, working, whatever, you're in the top 20% of wealth of the world, which is most Americans. So in a century, we've gone from grinding poverty to wealthiest in the world. So things are getting better, and that's just here. You look at other places. Look at China. I mean, it's a communist regime, and they're still being persecuted and suffering. Churches are literally being burned to the ground. But look at China 50 to 100 years ago, and 50 years ago, there was a strong missionary field there and in North Korea 100 years ago. But 50 years ago, even. But we see that. We see where North Korea was a strong Christian country, believe it or not. It was considered the Jerusalem of the Far East. It was that strong. What's his name? Kim Jong-un, the God, Rocket Man, the Gobbledygook guy. His grandparents were Christian missionaries in North Korea, right? And we see where he succumbed utterly to sin. But then we see where the church is still growing and persevering. The church hasn't died; it's pushing back and growing. And like we talked about before, the church is like the giant sequoia tree. It grows when there's fire. Without fire, the giant sequoia tree doesn't release its seeds. That's why they're actually having trouble getting them to naturally propagate. It's because they've stopped the wildfires in California by and large. So, to circle back around before I digress too far, keep turning your heart towards Him. Keep it towards Him. Keep sending your prayers towards Him, because you're being heard. And God will answer in your own time. He will. In His own time. I apologize. And in His own time may not be in your lifetime. That doesn't mean you shouldn't pray for something. Or it may be tomorrow. It may be a half hour from now. Our brother Mark gave us a beautiful testimony about the power of prayer yesterday. So, picking up in verse 13, the prince, well, I'll start in verse 12 again so we can recap there. Then he said to me, "Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day you set your heart to understand and humble yourself before your God. Your words have been heard, and I have come because of your words. The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, but Michael, one of the chief priests, came to help me. For I was left there with the king of Persia, and came to For I was left there with the kings of Persia, and came to make you understand what is to happen to your people in the later days. For the vision is for the days yet to come. When he had spoken to me according to these words, I turned my face towards the ground and was mute. And behold, one of the likeness of the children of man touched my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spoke. I said to him who stood before me, O my Lord, by reason of this vision, pains have come upon me, and I retain no strength. How can my Lord's servant talk with my Lord? For now no strength remains in me, and no breath is left in me. Again, one having the appearance of man touched me and strengthened me. When we tell God that we do not have the strength, by his means, by his grace, by his sovereign control, he will strengthen us. Again, one having the appearance of a man touched me and strengthened me. And he said, O man, greatly loved, fear not, peace be with you. Be strong and of good courage. Any of you who were there last night when I was preaching understand my stance on courage. We need to have more of it, right? We need to put down the shields of cowardice we've taken up and pick up the shield of manhood built on the foundation of Christ, standing firmly on Christ. And as he spoke to me, I was strengthened and said, Let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me. Then he said, Do you know why I have come to you? But now I will return to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come. But I will tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth. There is none who contends by my side against these except Michael, your prince. So we see here hinting of what's going to come. We'll be told a little bit later that Michael is the archangel of the Israelites. He is their angel. This is awesome. I mean, just the angelic interaction. And we got so much. We talked about the prophecy, the messianic prophecy, and just the wonderful hope that was after Daniel lamented and poured his soul out in anguish. And God revealed to him the promises of the Messiah and the restoration. Now here he is being strengthened by God's angels, having an interaction with angelic hosts. And we also get a brief insight, a little glimpse into the spiritual world, that there is a war going on around us. And I've said it before, that the kingdoms and ancient pagan gods, including and modern pagan gods, have a spiritual force behind them. There is no doubt about that. You cannot look at what they accomplished, the kings worshiping these gods. You cannot look at what these gods stood for, the way they were worshipped, the practices, and sometimes the results. That spiritual force was Satan, and still is his minions today. He's been bound from deceiving the nations, but he still has the ability to lie. God has blessed his elect with the ability to see past that. He has restrained and bound Satan from stopping the gospel in its tracks. Right? It was contained to just the nation of Israel. It was constantly contained there by war and embattlement. And God restrained Satan and the powers that he had in the ancient pagan gods, through the ancient pagan gods, to influence the matters of man. And he sent his son to die. He sent his son to die, and in that death won a victory over sin. For us. As a man, he lived a perfect life. And he died on a cross so that we could be proclaimed innocent in front of the Father. So that we could be built new. Step out of the old man and into the new man. And as those new men, because God has given men a very specific place and specific purpose as the head of the world. Not the king of the world, that's Jesus, and we are under Christ. But we have headship in the world. We have been commanded from the gate to go forth and subdue and rule in the name of God to further his kingdom. When Jesus says how to pray, the outline he gives is, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We're to pray that God's kingdom would be furthered. And he uses men like us to do that. And he died on a cross so that we could come to know this God this merciful God, so that we would be empowered and given the ability to be shaped into the men that he intended us to be, not the men the world called us to be, but the men God intended us to be. Away from the old and carry that message forward. So that's what we need to do, guys, every day. Who has prayer requests?